We're going to start in about 15 seconds.
Okay, thank you for joining us today. My name is Derek Sloan, Member of Parliament for Hastings, Lennox and Addington. I'm here today on behalf of the End the Lockdowns Caucus. The End the Lockdowns Caucus is a interparliamentarian, interjurisdictional caucus with over 60 elected members from the federal, provincial, and municipal levels of government. We have party leaders as well who have joined together from over 7 provinces to say that the use of the lockdowns as experienced in this country have been disproportionate to protecting us from COVID in relation to the harms that they have caused. And today I have with me 3 other prominent members of this caucus who will present our view on lockdowns from different levels. I will be addressing the federal level. Member Randy Hillier from the provincial legislature in Ontario will be addressing the Ontario response. Maxime Bernier will be addressing what is going on in Quebec, and Pastor Michael Thiessen will be addressing the impact on churches. We will be taking questions after this presentation, and our sole concern, of course, is to protect Canadians from all harms, including COVID, but in such a way that our net outcome is better as opposed to worse. And I believe with the implementation of the lockdowns as we have seen them, we are in fact worse off than if we had done more targeted measures to protect the most vulnerable. To speak about the federal government, I would like to be fair to them and say that COVID-19 caught all of us off guard. No one here should expect perfection from the government. But we should expect the government to learn and respond quickly. And what we have seen from our government is a series of failures, and I will outline them today. The first was a failure to respond to COVID-19 at the beginning. While countries like Taiwan implemented travel measures against COVID-19 on January 1st of 2020, our public health authorities were calling them racist and ineffective for months after this time. Taiwan is only roughly 100 miles off the coast of China, and yet they have had 11 total COVID deaths to date. That is 11 total, not 11 per million, but 11. This early failure to restrict travel, I believe, enabled the virus to gather critical steam here in Canada. The second failure was a failure to protect the elderly. We knew very early on that the virus was impacting disproportionately our elderly, and yet very little was done to keep them safe. It is true that the regulation of nursing homes and healthcare is a provincial matter, and there were failures at that level, but the federal government was not sounding the alarm on this when early data showed that seniors were disproportionately affected. The third failure was a failure to engage in experimental and prophylactic usage of promising drug and vitamin treatments. I will use ivermectin and vitamin D as examples, but there are others. The studies on the correlation between high vitamin D levels and positive outcomes with COVID have been impervious. The Karolinska Institute just published a comprehensive synthesis in the journal Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology on how vitamin D offers a great degree of protection against all respiratory viruses. Note, I'm not saying cure, but we are talking about what can we do statistically to enable our population to get through COVID with better outcomes. Recently, the World Health Organization updated its guide on therapeutics and COVID-19. Under ivermectin, the meta-analysis shows an 81% drop in mortality among those who used ivermectin as opposed to standard care. It also shows a 64% decrease in hospitalization. Nonetheless, the World Health Organization refuses to endorse it because it claims the confidence level is low. It is shocking to me that these global elites would continue to treat this long-used drug as experimental while treating novel vaccines that were only studied by the companies creating them as ironclad. And we are seeing issues with some of these vaccines right now. We should be proactively trying new treatments as every day counts in this fight. I have seen nothing to indicate proactivity on studying or using these promising treatments. If we are going to force even our 2-year-olds to wear masks, then the least we can do is recommend prophylactic vitamin D usage. The fourth failure was a failure of the federal government to give any useful information on COVID-19. Yes, they told us we were all in this together and other series of platitudes. And yes, they gave us case numbers and death counts. However, they did nothing to quell the fear that's so rampant in our society. This virus is far more dangerous for some people than others. We know through Statistics Canada that 95% approximately of fatalities in Canada due to COVID have been the elderly. Children 19 and under have, rounded to the nearest 0.1%, and I got this data this morning, 0.0% chance of dying from COVID. That data is accurate as of April 9th from Government of Canada sources. There have been 7 total deaths of those aged 0 to 19. We have lost far more kids to suicide than this. Every death is a tragedy. But remember, if we're creating more deaths than those we're preventing, that is a greater tragedy. In 2019, 20 kids, 3 times as many, died from the flu and pneumonia. Why are we keeping kids home from school? These facts in and of itself should keep our kids from being scared to death of this virus. The fear and anxiety from this pandemic have increased anxiety and fear significantly. McMaster reports that children in hospital for treatment after a suicide attempt have tripled over a 4-month period. This was the CBC I read the other day. The odds of the young and healthy dying from COVID-19 are exceptionally low. We should not be scaring them to death. The government could very easily, the federal government could very easily have calmed the nation with a serious and dispassionate look at the data. The final failure was turning on an endless monetary spigot that enticed all the provinces to engage in endless blanket lockdowns that quarantined the healthy and the sick alike. There is no need for blanket lockdowns. Targeted measures to help the most vulnerable would have saved tens of thousands of our seniors. The prophylactic use of vitamin D and ivermectin, amongst other drugs, would very likely have saved many lives. Instead, the government paid for and encouraged these lockdowns with no end in sight. This has been a catastrophic failure, and we need to open Canada up slowly but safely, with respect for the vulnerable, and working feverishly to examine these promising treatments. The government could do it now, but they are lulled into a false sense of security that is bankrupting our country day by day. Even American liberal media is calling out this government's failures, and we're not seeing the same level of criticism here. Lockdowns have costs. We're seeing it in a rapid rise of eating disorders, mental health conditions, addictions, bankruptcies, and more. The federal government has failed to act quickly and wisely with respect to this virus, and continues to make these mistakes over a year into the pandemic. All I'm asking is for the sanity to begin and to start now. Thank you so much.